Hello, thank you so much for joining me today. I want to talk about emotions, chronic health, and essential oils during this little talk today. I just went live a few days ago and talked more in depth about emotions and what we can do to help our emotions with aromatherapy and things like that. Today, I want to share with you one of my stories. We all have lots of stories, and one of my stories is about the deepest, darkest time of my life. And I think that when we're dealing with, it has to do with my chronic health journey. And when we're dealing with chronic health, a lot of emotions can come up with that. And it can be a very cyclical adventure, if you want to call it that, a cyclical ride of how that can spiral down and become a very negative emotional cycle. Um, so I'm gonna get like really raw here, and I'm gonna talk about more detail about my story. So if you have been following it along at all, you know that I had my stomach removed 4 years ago. That opened a can of worms for me when it came to emotions because it brought up a lot of the past as far as my dad's death went and dealing with all of those emotions that came up. And I had my stomach removed, and then I had some complications from that. I was, for about 2 years, dealing with very extreme, excruciating, debilitating, intermittent pain episodes. Most of the time I was okay, but these pain episodes would creep up on me with no rhyme or reason. I worked really closely with my doctor, my dietitian, to figure out if the pain was being caused by something I was eating or if it was something else that was going on. In my gut and in my heart, I knew it was something else going on, but I had to go through all the hoops to make sure that I wasn't just jumping to conclusions. So, in and out of the emergency room for 2 years, in and out of the emergency room, um, having to leave work early, having to just lay down and literally do nothing because I had to breathe through the pain, um, debilitating. And then it would wipe me out. It would put me into a state of just like post-ictal almost. If you know anything about seizures, you know that most people have a post-ictal phase after a seizure, and I've never had a seizure, so I don't know what that feels like, but that's the best that I knew how to explain this feeling of just being so tired and so out of it, and I couldn't function. Some of these episodes would last for 10 minutes. Some of them would last for 2 hours. Some of them would last for 12 hours. There was no rhyme or reason. I couldn't get a feel for what was happening or why and whatever. Like I said, in and out of emergency rooms, trying to figure it out. Actually, in and out of the operating room. My doctor who removed my stomach actually took me into the operating room just to figure out what was going on. He thought that maybe there was some adhesions causing some pain, and he couldn't find anything. So fast forward to the time that I wanted to talk mostly about was the deepest, darkest time of my life. I had the pain again, and at that point I was like self-medicating at home because I'm like, there's no point in going to the emergency room. They're just gonna give me pain meds and send me home. So I started taking some oral pain medication that I just happened to have at home, and it was like 2 days later, and I'm like, okay, this is probably not a good thing, so I should probably go to the hospital. So went to the hospital. I was in communication with my surgeon that entire time and talking to him through all of it, so he knew what was going on. My surgeon, I live in Arizona. My surgeon is in Maryland at the NIH. He has a research study for people just for CDH1 genetic mutations, which is what I have. And I went to the emergency room. They did an ultrasound. I had some gallstones. These are not what was causing the pain before. It was in a different location, but very similar pain. Um, Gallstones, but they were stuck in my common bile duct. So that was what was causing all that pain. So my doctor flew me out to the NIH and I had surgery. A surgery that was supposed to take a couple of hours, if that, turned into an almost 4-hour surgery, if I'm remembering correctly. And I woke up and he was like, so the good news is we found the stones. The bad news is we only got one of them out and we have no idea where the other one went. I'm going to try to make this short and sweet because this is not exactly why I was getting on here to tell you my entire story, but it is involved with emotions and chronic health and that negative spiral that we go through. So bear with me here. So he was like, I don't know where it went. It just kind of disappeared. We looked for hours for it. We did all the things that we know how to do, and we still couldn't find it. So he closed me up and called it a day. And I'm like, okay, well maybe it just left my common bile duct and they didn't really see what was happening to it at that time. Maybe they just couldn't see it. So I had high hopes, and then they were going to send me home a couple of days later. They were like, you're ready to go home. You can go, whatever. I convinced them to do some labs on me again just to make sure that my bilirubin was okay and that everything was going the way it was supposed to. Well, my bilirubin had shot up again. So they took me to get a scan. They saw a stone in my common bile duct, and he's like, I don't know what to do. Without a stomach, your plumbing and your anatomy is a little bit difficult to get to your gallbladder. So what most people would go do is they would have an ERCP, which is them going like a scope and taking a camera and going in there and fishing it out and being able to pull that stone out without having to have any intervention, like surgical intervention. That wasn't an option for me. He actually talked to one of his really close friends and colleagues to see if he would try to do that for me, and he's like, no way in hell am I doing that. I'm not touching her. So the only way to go about doing it was to go back into the operating room. This was literally 2 days after I just had my other surgery. And keep in mind, when he did the first surgery, he had to open me up again. So he tried to do it laparoscopically. He couldn't get what he wanted, so they ended up having to open me up to try to find that second stone. So this will now be that was the third time I had been opened up completely within 2 years. So then this 2 days later, he has to go back surgically and do this. He's like, I'm gonna just open you up again. That scar's nice and fresh. And it's gonna be easy. We're gonna clamp to make sure that stone doesn't go anywhere, blah, blah, blah. More of the details, right? Well, I wake up. What was supposed to be an hour and a half surgery was another like 4-hour surgery. At this point, I was beyond words. I was actually pissed. All those emotions are going to start flooding back to me now, but I was convinced that I was going to spend the rest of my life in an operating room, in and out of the emergency room. I was like, what the hell is going on? He told me they couldn't find the stone. It disappeared. He also told me that he did some surgical intervention so that if the stone was in there, he just couldn't find it, that it would be able to actually go through the common bile duct. So he was able to open that up so that things could flow a little bit easier if it was still in there. So that made me feel good that he did everything in his power that he could. But I still felt very, very low in that moment. So low to the point I was so angry, you guys. I don't even I think I was kind of outside my body a little bit. I was saying horrible things. I didn't want to come home. I didn't want to see my kids. I just didn't. I'm trying to be better about not apologizing when I have emotions, but it's not why I came on here. I didn't come on here to cry. I came on here to teach you about emotions and chronic health and how we can support those with essential oils. So, the deepest, darkest moments in my life, it's a vicious cycle. I even had to talk to mental health professionals while I was there, which is probably the best thing for me. And thankfully, I have a very supportive, very strong support group and supportive system in my life where I had a husband who was keeping me in check and keeping my head above water and all that stuff. But so anyway, the point is, it's a vicious cycle. You get into the cycle, it is so hard to pull yourself out. I was able to talk to some professionals there at the hospital, and I was able to pull myself out enough to know that I needed to come home and I needed to see my babies. So I want to mention that now is that if you're in a place, we are meant to feel all of our emotions, right? The best part about human experience is feeling all the things. That's what makes us unique. as animals, as mammals, and we can feel the wide range of emotions, but it's a matter of knowing how to cope with those emotions and how to handle them and deal with them. So if you're in a place where feeling your emotions has you not living your day to day, unable to function, keeping you from doing your normal day to day activities, I want to strongly encourage you to talk to a professional, to speak to somebody who can listen and can guide you and can help, okay? I don't think that you should ever do it alone. If you need help, get it. There's no shame in that. Um, so the vicious cycle, the negative emotions, dwelling on them, it can wreak havoc on our physical bodies. So the physical issues that I was having was causing these negative emotions, which was then causing more physical issues. It's just this horrible cycle, and there's more and more research being done on like the mind body connection and all those things, but it's all fascinating to me. So when um, I want to talk about the science of emotions a little bit. So we have in our brain, we have our limbic system that contains our amygdala, which is responsible for our flight or fight response. And then we have our hippocampus, which is responsible for our memories. And then our prefrontal cortex here is responsible for reasoning and creativity and problem solving and comprehension. So then that's all in our brain, in our limbic system. And then we have our olfactory bulb, which is like inside your nose. So when you smell something, it goes through the olfactory bulb directly to your limbic system, okay? When we're stressed, which is an emotional response, the prefrontal cortex, all your reasoning, your problem solving, your comprehension, all of that is like shut down. You can't communicate effectively. And when our amygdala is firing, that's when our amygdala is firing, is when we're stressed out. So that's the fight or flight response. So that's what shuts off the prefrontal cortex. So, for example, when I was little, I remember being at a friend's house with my brother, and there was a ice cream truck that came, and we were so excited to get ice cream. And we crossed the street, we got our ice cream, and then all of a sudden, I remember my brother, who at the time was probably 4 years old, darted across the street. He couldn't see if there was any cars coming because the ice cream truck was in the way. Um, all of us older kids were back a little bit. I was only a few years older. And as soon as he started running, I remember blacking out. I didn't see any of it. I don't remember what happened because I didn't see it. I just remember what people told me. So that was me stressed flight or fight response, and my prefrontal cortex literally shutting down. I could not reason. I couldn't function. I blacked out. Um, so our sense of smell is directly linked to our limbic system and our amygdala. So by smelling and breathing in pleasant aromas, we can calm our amygdala or our emotions in a flight or fight response. I have friends who have toddlers, and this is a perfect way to test this. If you're at all skeptical of using aromatherapy to help our emotions, go see a toddler. You know, toddlers have breakdowns, right? They have temper tantrums. So I have several friends who I didn't use oils when my kids were toddlers, really. Um, I didn't know about them so much. So I can't speak to this for my own kids, but several of them, when they have a tantruming 2-year-old, they literally just take a bottle of lavender and they give it to the kid, and the kid, like, of course, toddlers like want to open and play and pour and all the things, and they just open it up, and they don't sit here and smell it because that's not what toddler and 2-year-olds do, but they just open it up, and then the aroma, they literally calm down. It's like magic. It's fascinating to me. So back to the story of the deepest moment in my life when I was going through all that medical stuff and my deep emotions. I didn't know how, I didn't lean into all of my aromatherapy and oils at the time. I had been using them for quite some time, but I just hadn't gotten to a point where I knew how to use them for emotions. And when you're in that space, it's also really difficult to know that you're in that space and what you really need in that moment. So it can be difficult to recognize, oh, I feel like this, so I'm going to go grab an oil. I want you to know that beneath every behavior is a feeling, and beneath every feeling is a need. And when we meet that need, rather than focus on the behavior, we begin to deal with the cause and not the symptoms. That's by a woman named Ashley Warner. She's a family psychologist, and that is so true, especially with our kids. So eventually I ended up turning on my diffuser with some of my favorite oils. I don't even remember exactly what I diffused. And that's the beauty of essential oils and using them for emotions. It doesn't matter what you use. If you like the aroma of something, use it. This aroma passing through my olfactory bulb into my limbic system, calming my amygdala so that my prefrontal cortex can turn back on. That's what that's about, right? It's just like taking that deep breath, getting in the present moment, and being able to rationalize. Um, the more I practice using essential oils during times of stress or negative emotions, it actually is easier to recognize when I should be using them. So it's just like everything else. The more you do it, the better you get. Practice makes progress, right? Um, and it's always nice to have a friend to remind you too. Like, I have, if I have a friend that is struggling with something, I'm like, have you used your oils recently? Like, open up that bottle and just smell it. You're going to be amazed at how much it helps you. Some of my favorite emotional support oils are lavender, frankincense, white angelica orange is super uplifting. Idaho blue spruce is amazing. I've been using Idaho grand fir recently to work through some emotional patterns that that are no longer serving me. I want you to also know that using essential oils is not a shortcut to being emotionally healthy. You got to do the work too. It's just another tool in our toolbox to help us cope and to be able to move forward. Obviously, there are other things that you can do with your emotions. Exercising, getting regular physical activity helps so much. Being out in nature, having quiet time, sometimes reading can help. I know that helps with me a lot. Dancing, obviously. I love to dance and move my body. I do want to mention, I mentioned this the other day when I was here too, but this book, Releasing Emotional Patterns with Essential Oils, has been a game changer for me. I mean, I can flip through here and show you all the tag marks of some of the emotional cycles that I've been trying and working on for the last couple of years. It's crazy. It's crazy how it works. It almost like expedites the process of you working through negative emotional cycles. Let's see. We can't talk about emotions and chronic health issues without talking about our physical bodies, right? So we need to make sure we're fueling our bodies with good quality nutrients and food. And I talk about this a lot when I'm talking about just nourishing our bodies. Ningxia Red, I have that right here actually with me, is something that I use every single day. It's a whole food um, supplement, essentially, that whole food and natural a supplement that helps with our physical body so much. But because I'm helping my physical body, I'm also helping my emotional body. It's all connected. Exercise helps us release all those happy hormones and endorphins. Sleep is super important. If you're sleep deprived, you'll notice that you're more susceptible to stress or just feeling all the emotions even more strongly. Hydration is super key too. Even mild dehydration can alter our mood, according to the University of Connecticut, which is crazy to me. So if you or even your kids are having issues with strong emotions, they're unable to cope, like maybe they're thirsty, maybe they need to eat, maybe they need more sleep, like all those things can play a role, right? But in the moment, it's easy to say that, but in the moment, sometimes it's difficult to get them to eat or drink or go to sleep because you know they need all those things, but it's difficult to get them to a place where they can actually rationalize that thought. So that's where essential oils can come in. Being consistent and being very proactive when taking care of our physical and mental health always increases our ability to cope with stress. So the more proactive you are with taking care of yourself and your health and your mental health and your physical health and all those things, it allows you to cope better when stress does come your way. So yeah, that's a short little emotions and chronic health and aromatherapy talk that I wanted to share with you today. I hope you got some value from this. I would love to hear from you if you've ever tried aromatherapy for emotions or if you're struggling with the negative cycle of emotions and chronic health and that whole thing. I'm here for you. I'd love to talk with you. Again, just want to help encourage you and know that it does get better. There is hope and we can do it together. So if you need anything, let me know. I'm here for you, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.